Hey, we started this series called Christian Atheist. Everyone say Christian Atheist. And we started this series last week with the whole premise of simply this. It's on the screen, is believing in God but living as if He doesn't exist. That if we're really Christians, if we're really this disciple, follower of Christ thing, then our testimony, how we live, shouldn't be soft and shouldn't be fake to others. Our testimony shouldn't be soft and shouldn't be fake to others, all right? I mean, we should really be living the real deal. And so many times, I think we need to ask ourselves, am I just calling myself something and you can't tell that God is really doing anything in my life? Or am I really seeing God work in my life, but you and I make a decision if we're going to go beyond being Christian atheists and if we're going to live this thing out for real 100%. So the last couple of weeks, this is the third week in this series, the first week was, I believe in God, but I don't know Him. And last week it was, I believe in God, but I'm not sure He loves me. And next week's going to be, I believe in God, but I don't trust Him fully with my life. And then the next week is going to be, I believe in God, but I don't forgive people. And today what we're going to focus on is simply this, I believe in God, but I don't go overboard. I mean, I don't take this thing to the extreme, too far. There's kind of some fanatics out there that are kind of wackos or crazy, and they take this thing way too far. I don't go overboard. And many times when we say I don't go overboard, what we're saying is that's a little too much for me. That's a little too difficult. I mean, I don't know that that's all that's expected. But who decides what is overboard? Who decides where that's going too far, it's taking it too far? When do we know when it's good enough? At what point, because there's simply, this is going to come into our minds, and this is really what we're doing, is at what point is it just not necessary to do all of that? Or in my mind, am I really saying at some point that just sounds unreasonable and it sounds too far? And honestly, there are many Christians that when they look at the Bible, they look at that and the expectations of living for God completely 100 sold out, is I think that we just see like there's sometimes where the Bible, where God is just unreasonable. And so what I want you to do in your life and in your Christian walk, if you have committed your life to Christ, then we have to look at this through another lens and look at it differently. So for moms, I just want to kind of give you a twist and an approach, and the rest of you will really understand this and where I'm going. But moms, what if you have the opportunity to think through having kids in advance, and at what point would it be overboard? All right? What point would it be overboard? I mean, think about this. You have to carry around a bowling ball for 9 months in your belly. And then eventually you give birth to a bowling ball. And then what's going to happen is that you're going to lose hours and hours of sleep. You're going to have to take time off of work to take care of this baby. It's going to cost you money. And what you're going to have to do is get up and feed it throughout the night constantly. I mean, this baby thing wants to eat and eat and eat. You got to change diapers that are messy. Your husband won't do it, so it's a mess. But you go on through life and you have all these costs and expenses for diapers, and it goes on and on and on. And you got to buy a stroller, and you have all these different items you need to pull together. And then they grow older and they become toddlers, and you're buying them clothes to dress them. And then when they're toddlers, actually they have the audacity to say, "Oh, I don't like red. I don't want to wear blue." And it's like, who do you think you are, And here it's, I'm doing all these things for you. And then you have to feed this human. You have to feed this human every day, 3 times throughout the day. And if you have a teenager, it's like 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, it is outrageous how much you need to feed this child. And you go throughout the year, and when they're sick, you have to take time off of work to make sure they're taken care of. You have to make sure they have all the clothes they need and the shoes they need. And going on through, as they get older and adolescents, you want to make sure they have everything they need. And you have to do this for 18 years. Unless you have a millennial more. But I want you to see this. At what point, if you were to kind of reason that and think about that, would you say, wait a minute, this is going a little overboard? This is going a little far. See, sometimes, and we look at that and it's like, well, my mind doesn't look at it that way. What I want to help us do today is to not look at our relationship with God at some point that it's overboard, that it's overkill, but it's something natural but that's what I want, that's necessary. So the question is how important is a relationship with God? What is that like for you? How much has Christ meant to you that you're willing to say, nothing's overboard, though it sounds unreasonable and it doesn't sound rational? You know, with our pastoral staff and our leadership in our church, I push really hard for them to pray and read and study their Bible every single day. I push hard for that. What if I was to push you hard for that? Would that be offensive? Would that be intrusive? Like, are you serious? You're going to tell me that? Because I even felt like that. I told our staff, I said, I kind of feel like I'm going somewhere I don't have any right to go. Like, pushing buttons. Are they going to be mad at me or upset with me? At what point in our relationship with God are we saying, hey, that's too far. Let me live my life. Let me do it the way I want. Or are we saying that it's overboard and I'm not willing, I don't know if I can go there? At what point are we able to say maybe it's not overboard, but possibly necessary? See, here's the thing about a Christian atheist. You may want to write this down. It's not in your notes, but take notes. I encourage you. That's when you get together for groups this week. You're going to talk about this. See, Christian atheists, they believe in God, but they just don't believe that following Christ should complicate their life. I can say that again. See, Christian atheists, they believe in God, but they just don't think of following Christ should complicate their life. Somehow we just think, I became a Christian. I walk on water. And things just kind of come together like the chips just fall in our favor all the time. And we even have this mentality like, doesn't God want me to just be happy and enjoy everything? Shouldn't this thing just be easy and nice? I mean, when is it good enough? When is it good enough to God? When is it good enough for God to where now you're expecting too much from me? Many of you have probably purchased cookies from Mrs. Fields Cookies before in the mall or wherever. And one sign I seen that when I was getting something there one time, I seen up on the wall, it says, good enough never is. Good enough never is. So in my relationship with Christ, it can't be something where I just go this far and say, this is good. It's pretty good here. I'm looking good. I've done my duty. I'm in that place. No, but I would see that there's so much more further to go. The great evangelist Billy Graham said this. He said, salvation is free, but discipleship will cost you your life. Yeah. Whoa, that's overboard. My life? Everything? And Jesus, he preached that and he shared that because he wanted more for us, and he was willing to go ahead and cut to the chase because he wanted more for our lives than just where we were and what seems good to us. We're going to look in the book of John here in a minute, and we're going to pick up in a scenario where Jesus is having a conversation with this crowd, this following that has developed over time. He's been performing miracles. He's been changing lives. I mean, he has been able to go with people and care for them, and they totally change the perspective on God. And he's got his 12 disciples with him through it all. But he gets to a point to where he has these followers, and it turns out that they're really Christian atheists. They believe in what he's doing, but this whole thing of living the way it exists and the bar that Jesus sets, I don't know if I'm willing to go there. And so we see how they respond to it. But what happens is he's performing these miracles, doing this great work, and at one point, he just stops and starts telling them some things that are just outlandish and crazy. They're metaphorical, but yet they're theological and helping them to see this is the way this relationship with God thing is going to go from now on. So he uses terms like this. You're going to eat my flesh and drink my blood. That's what my look would have been too. It would have been like, what in the world is he saying? We're going to be cannibals? Or, I mean, I can't imagine, their thoughts like we're going to have Jesus sandwiches or Jesus tacos. Am I going to wash it down with blood? What is he talking about? And what he's cutting to the chase is, and they knew this, was that he was saying, I'm the bread of life. And the only way that you're going to have life is to eat of me being the bread of life. Your relationship with me now, your eternity is based on that relationship. And he's saying with the blood, no longer you're going to have to get these sacrifices to cover all the sins that you messed up. It's going to happen with me, and you just need to accept my blood of washing all your sins away. And now you go to heaven and you're forgiven too. And so he's laying all this out and they can't understand it. And it's like he's playing hardball with them, and they get upset with him. And if you look to John chapter 6, if you would turn there in your Bibles, or you can look on the screen in your notes, etc. This is their response to what Jesus is saying and talking to them. It says, when many of the disciples heard it, what he said, they said this is a hard saying. Who can listen to it? Basically, can you believe what he just said? We've been hearing about this and we've been doing all this, and he's going, I can't handle this. This is ridiculous. That's their response. Who in the world says something like that? That is impossible. That's too difficult, too hard. And it says, but Jesus, knowing in himself that his disciples were grumbling, they were complaining and whining about this, he said to them, do you take offense at this? What are you offended? That I've done all these great miracles, and then there's this life that goes along with it to see even more and to see me bless your life even more? And then this was the response that was so painful to read and to hear, and sometimes it happens with us. It says, after this, many of his disciples turned back and no longer walked with him. So Jesus said to the 12, do you want to go away too? You want to go away as well? He's saying, look, all these other Christian atheists here, they believe in me, man. They seen the miracles. But man, when I told them, when I drew the line here, now I was going overboard. That was too far. Jesus, you're being too extreme. And now he's saying to his disciples, and if you're a disciple and a follower of Christ and say, I'm fully in this thing and I'm fully committed, then my question for you today would be like Jesus asked them, is do you want to go too? Or do you want to leave? Are you going to say this is overboard like the rest of these guys did and they walked away and they turned and they just, I'm out, no good, I'm not doing this anymore? I want you to hear this today. See, they loved his miracles and they loathed his mandates. They loved those things. Man, walking on water, calming the sea, the blind see, the lame walk. They're being raised from the dead. They love that part, but they loathe the mandates. When he says, but this is the life that it's going to require to see more of this and to see eternity and life everlasting. And they didn't like this part, but they loved this. And since they loved this so much and didn't like this so much, it says they turned back and said, I'm out, peace, deuces. I can't go there. I think it's overkill and I think it's overboard. And what I want us to get today, if you're really fully committed and you're not going to be a Christian atheist, it's more than just believing in God, but you can see clearly he exists and he's living inside of you. Then what I would want you to do is have this new mentality. Is simply this, is what we call overboard, Jesus calls necessary. What we call overboard, Jesus calls necessary. That this is the life, this is what I've paved out for you. That these are the great things, the changes that I want to make, that I want to see you make, to where you can live the blessed life and the wide open life that you've desired and what I've designed for you from the very beginning. And so Jesus draws this line, and we have a decision that we're going to make. Is this overboard? Is this too extreme? Is all the stuff in here, like it gets to a point where it's like, whoa, pump the brakes. I'm not going there. I got this little safe thing going on right here. Are we going to say, no, it's not overboard. It may be difficult, but I know this. It's necessary to Jesus, and so it's going to be necessary to me. But I want to share some things today that if we're going to take the route to where we feel like this is overboard, I want to talk today about some things that we trade off. That if we say this is overboard, what we're doing is we're just giving an excuse and a reason for me to stay the way I am. But when we do that, there's a trade-off for it. So if you follow along in your notes, you can get some of these ideas and thoughts and be able to wrap your mind around them. And the first one is this, is that when we think he's overboard, what we do is we trade pressure for comfort. We trade pressure. Everyone say pressure. For comfort. Oh, for comfort. All right, okay. So we trade this pressure for comfort, and I picture a referee in a football stadium full of fans. Now, it can get to 70,000 fans, or even in college football, it can get to over 100,000 fans in one stadium. And you can imagine if a referee, he made a bad call, he's going to hear it. He's going to hear it loud. He's going to hear the boos. He's going to hear they're going to cuss him out. Everything is coming to him, and he has a decision to make. Either I'm going to cave, and I'm going to go for what's comfortable, or I'm going to stick with my word. And you and I, we're going to follow and get into times of living for Christ where it's going to be tough to live your word out. And what happens is many times is we don't want to bring stuff up in like the workplace because we've gotten the jabs before. We've gotten the teasing before. We've got the little sly remarks from people that is just a jab because of our faith. So we don't live out our faith. We don't talk about being a Christian or a follower of Christ. We definitely won't share it because we know it can cause problems. It causes tension and it causes pressure. But in Galatians, it helps us to see exactly what we're doing when we choose comfort. When it doesn't hurt so bad, it's easier instead of just enduring the pressure. It says this in Galatians. It says, "For am I now seeking the approval of man or of God? Or am I trying to please man? If I were still trying to please man, I would not be a servant of Christ." When you and I come to the crossroads of pressure and comfort, we have an opportunity to stay and have confirmation of our following of Christ and being a Christian, or we fade off and say, I've got to go with comfort because it's easier. And that's when we become this Christian atheist and living this different type of life. Are you following me this morning? And so is it going to be overboard, or is it just going to be, this is necessary for me? So we trade that off. The next thing we trade off is sacrifice for compromise. We trade sacrifice for compromise. In this story, in this moment where Jesus is drawing the line, it says this: they turned and they no longer followed him. Which means there were the 12 that stuck it through, and they understood, I can't turn, I can't do this partially. What I have to do is it's all in. I have to turn and keep following him. I can't turn back like the others. Because being a disciple, being a Christian, isn't partial. You can't kind of be a Christian. You can't kind of be on a diet. You can't kind of be pregnant. You can't kind of. This is black and white. It's going to bring sacrifice. To where, am I going to keep laughing at the same jokes? Am I going to keep watching the same stuff? Am I going to keep putting myself in a place of temptation where I keep doing the same thing? Am I going to be in a place to where it's like, how much can I get away with? And it's okay still. It's not overboard. Because see, if we're not willing to sacrifice, we're willing to compromise, promise, compound promises. I'm promising to myself, and yet I'm promising to God, and I'm not sacrificing. I'm staying in the middle. And Jesus made it clear. Can't do that. It can't be that way. It has to be necessary to follow me and give everything to me. And this is what it says. Jesus is being so clear to his disciples in Matthew. It says, then Jesus said to his followers, if people want to follow me, they must give up the things that they want. They must be willing even to give up their lives to follow me. They have to give up the things that are in the way that actually cause them to pull back. And you know the stuff that competes with God? You know the things when like today when I'm talking about this and you may be a little offended, like giving pushback, you don't like what I'm saying because I'm getting in your business, is that you think of that thing that's there that prevents you, and it's like, well, I don't want to give that up. I like that. See, there's a saying that goes like this: your allegiance lies with what competes with God. That's where your allegiance is, and we have a determination. What we're going to have to decide is, am I going to go ahead and compromise and try to keep this in my life, or I have to understand this competes and I've got to get rid of it? So my question for you is this: if you're sold out, If you're like, man, I'm in this thing to be a Christian, to be a devoted follower of Christ, here's a question for you. What is competing with Christ? What's competing? What's there that when you think, man, I want more, but what's there? What's competing there? Because that's keeping you in compromise rather than sacrifice, and instead of being able to do what's necessary in the eyes of God to have the life that He's designed for you. So we give up. We trade off sacrifice for compromise. Another thing we do, this is huge, is that we trade off consecration for comparison. We trade off consecration for comparison. What I'm saying with comparison is that we, follow me on this, we gauge our morality by what we see in other people. We gauge our morality by how we compare down. Why is it that we don't always, when we're comparing our morality, we don't compare up, we compare down? I know I'm talking to some. Okay. That usually the lingo is, in the conversation, the mindset is this: well, I'm not as bad as... well, I don't talk like them. This was okay. Or I don't go and sleep around, and I don't go and gamble like them. I don't go and do this. And we have all these different things that we push off. It's not that bad because you know what? In our minds we're thinking, that's overboard. If I go and follow like that, it's okay to have a middle ground here and stay here. And the problem is that we're following what we see instead of listening to what we hear from the Holy Spirit and from God, that the fruits of the Holy Spirit, the love, the joy, the peace, the patience, the faithfulness, all those things need to be growing in my life, but I'm going by what I see in other people and how bad they are to make myself feel better. I'll never see God doing a complete work in my life. So what's God calling you to a higher place in? What's keeping you down and you can't go to the higher place that God has for you? Because we keep comparing to other people, and we can't stay there. He says real clear in 2 Corinthians, it says, that is why the Lord has said, leave them. Everyone say, leave them. Separate yourselves from them. Don't touch their filthy things, and I will come to you. Don't touch all the things that they do. Don't go to the same places they are. Don't compromise and give of yourself and go to these different places because you're comparing yourself with other people. What he's saying is, get separate from that. Don't be there, because that's not where I come to you. I come to you when it's just me and you, and you've separated yourself. And that word filthy, it comes from a word that means impure. We're talking about a purity thing. If you want to have a pure, close relationship with God where He's really working in your life, then you can't stay in the same places doing the same things and comparing yourself with the wrong people. Yep. What really we're asking ourselves is this: how impure can I be? How impure? They're really impure. How impure can I be and we're good? It's not overboard. It's not going too far. Because remember, what's overboard in our eyes? It's necessary in God's eyes. Another thing that we trade off is transformation for conformation. Conformation, not confirmation, but conformation. Either we are being transformed by this God, this Jesus Christ who died on the cross and gave of Himself for us. Either we're being transformed and changed, or we're conforming. We're slipping into neutral and we're going along with what's around us and the culture around us. And we don't look like what a Christian should look like. As a matter of fact, we may look like what everybody else is. And if we look like what everybody else is, we don't stand out. And I just think that we were called to stand out and to be different and be transformed. If there isn't transformation or change, then Christianity is just another religion. Those are good beliefs. Those things stand out good. They sound like morality. But when there's transformation, that's when we know that Jesus is alive inside of us. So the question is there any change going on in your life because of Jesus? Is there any change happening inside of you? Think about it. If you've committed your life to Christ, you said, I'm a Christian. I'm going to follow Him with all of my life. How much change have you seen maybe in the last 5 years? Where, man, there's just some significant changes. You're different. How about in the last year? In the last 6 months? Maybe in the last month? Because Jesus should be making a difference. He should be changing us. And it's not because he doesn't know what he's doing. It's not because he doesn't know what he's doing. It's because we have to give ourselves. Either I'm just going to go ahead and conform and fall here into default, or I'm going to say, Jesus, I need you to change all of me. So our mindset, the way we look at life, the way we look at our relationship with God, there has to be a change. In the book of Romans, in chapter 12, it talks about those two words, that we're either transforming or we're conforming. And the key is the way we think in our mind that we're being transformed into something newer, we stay conforming. And I like how it says it in the Message Bible in Romans. It says, don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit in without even thinking. You're already there. Instead, fix your attention on who? Fix your attention on God. You'll be changed from the inside out. Readily recognize what he wants from you and quickly respond to it. That's where the change happens. That when he tells me something, when he speaks into my heart, when he speaks into my mind and is challenging me to go to a new place, that I know I respond to it quickly, and that's where transformation and change comes from. Or I'll tell you what, this Christian thing is useless if there's not a change inside of me from what Jesus did. And we all know this, that what is overboard in our eyes and to us is necessary in Jesus' eyes. Another thing we trade off, and this is the last thing, is that we trade commitment for casual. We trade commitment for casual. Everyone say casual. We get into a place to where now we're just kind of doing this Christian thing. You know the Christian thing where, yeah, you help out here and there. Yeah, you show up to church occasionally, and you look for needs of other people, and you do all that, which these are good things. You help out, and we have good ideas, but we have this kind of mentality sometimes that if I can, I'll fit it into my schedule. See, one thing that's different between that and what commitment really is you think about when you married your spouse, you didn't commit based on emotions when I'm not feeling it. It doesn't sit on your attitudes. It doesn't sit on conflicts or different seasons of life. And if it's convenient, it doesn't settle on that. It doesn't matter. It's commitment. And when it's not commitment, then it just becomes casual. It just becomes like everything else. Check this out. I've never read in the Bible where Jesus said, just do what works for you. And I've given you all this stuff. Spelled it out pretty good. You've seen me work. You've seen how I live. You just go ahead and do what works for you. And we wouldn't say that, but honestly, maybe our lives look like, I just kind of do what works for me because the rest is overboard. That's for the professional Christians, the pastors, and, the missionaries, and those who have a call in their lives. Look, a call in your life is not reserved for special people. We all have it. And so what happens is we live casual, so we don't, when it talks about times of stretching out and really trusting God in faith, we avoid those times. When it has to do with being faithful to the Lord and serving and giving and being here faithful to church and growing, not just for the sake of being at church, but because, man, I need Him to be first in my life. It's not being casual. We need to be committed in these areas. And sometimes, Jesus, when you read His words, He can be so straight, cut to a knife, and direct that it's almost offensive. That it looks like He's being overboard. Like, Jesus, that's overkill. How could you expect that? Nobody could do that. This is what He says here in the book of Mark. We can have that scripture up right now. See? It's magic. Abracadabra. Anyway, Mark 7:8. It says, for you ignore God's specific orders and substitute your own traditions. You substitute. See, God gives us specific orders. Does He do this to be bossy or condemning? No. He points and gives us specific orders so we know when we're on target and when we're not. He's not doing this to hurt us. He's like, this is where you know you're in the sweet spot with me and when you're going to be living and experiencing a blessed life. So what we do is Jesus is saying you're ignoring it because instead of just saying I'm on target and I'm going the same specific direction, we're saying I'm vaguely going in that direction. Follow me, don't let me lose you. Is that I'm vaguely going in that direction and I'm kind of softening some things. Maybe there's times where I just soften the Bible and the Word and what God's speaking. And he says this, and you make up your own traditions, i.e., you're just kind of deciding what's more important to you and what fits for you. You're being casual instead of saying this is necessary and it's not overboard. See, people, Christian atheists, who say that it's going overboard at some point, we've just heard it. They live comfortably. They live compromising. They live conforming. They live comparing. And they become casualties in this life of living for God with everything that you have so that you can live the best life now that He's designed just for you. When Jesus is talking to them and this scenario is going down, it said this, that He could hear and He knew that they were grumbling. He knew that they were over there complaining. He just performed miracles. He had fed the masses. He had done all these things. And they're over here complaining. Are you kidding me? This miracle, He was so nice before. He's going to tell us? This is ridiculous. This is extreme. It's good for them, but I don't think it's necessary. It's overboard. And Jesus had to address that at some point because they were offended by Him that He would say, this is what it takes. This is how you get it, how you have it, how you keep it. They were missing something. They were missing something that was at the core that made all the rest happen. When I was about 10 years old, I lived with my stepmom and my dad. And my stepmom had it in her heart for years to adopt a baby. And so finally, when I was 10, they actually adopted a baby boy named Nick. He's my brother. And they adopted him and they took him in as their own. It wasn't ever thought of like, hey, he's the adopted one. He was just ours. He was our own. And they would take him in. They stayed up the late nights. They fed him, changed his diapers, took him to school, bought him the clothes, bought him glasses when he needed them, put him in private school. They invested, gave him everything, their attention, their heart, and their soul, because they adopted him and he was as their own and they loved him as their own. That's why Jesus went and gave of Himself so that we could be adopted by our Heavenly Father who loves us. And now because of Jesus and the love that He has for us, which was not overboard to Him, it was necessary, that now we have claimed a right as sons and daughters of God to have the inheritance and the life that He wants, because Jesus said, this is not overboard, it is necessary for you to be with my Father in heaven. That's what He did. And the reason that we're willing to say this is not overboard is because the love that I have for Him supersedes any type of obligation or difficulty that I may face. And I'm not going to be compromising. I'm not going to look to be comfortable. I'm not going to conform. I'm not going to compare. I'm not going to be casual. And He gets to the point. And He turns to His disciples, His core disciples, the 12, the rest were walking away. And He said this, you want to leave too? This is your door. You can leave too. Unless this is overboard. Unless this is overkill and you think it's too much. So my question for you today, just a little gut check for us. You want to leave too? Jesus has given us specific orders. He wants to perform great works. He's proved it. Do you want to leave? Or do you want to say, no, I want to give my life. I love Him. I'm giving everything to Him because of what He does and because of who He is. My life is surrendered to Him.